Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale, Wiseox AI, and Benny Keith Foods. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, where we're exploring the senior living industry through a lens of food, hospitality, and resident experience. If you're a leader, operator, or culinary pro in senior living, you know you're in the right place. Today, we're pulling the curtain on 2025, and in doing so, we're going to revisit the conversations that truly move the needle for resident experience. Over the past year, we've dug into dementia-friendly dining, the power of small environmental and menu changes, and what it looks like to keep dignity and choice at the center of every experience. We've also talked about emergency preparedness, how those events test not just your systems, but your culture. We've explored what real food means in senior living today, from speed scratch and nutrient-dense menus to honoring the dishes residents actually crave. We've highlighted engagement programs that went far beyond bingo, using food, storytelling, and sensory experiences to build true community. And we've kept coming back to frontline leadership, to you, the supervisors, managers, and directors who turn strategy into lived experience in senior living restaurants, activity rooms, cafes, and all sorts of spaces in your communities every single day. So in this year in review episode, my goal is to connect all of those threads and ask one big question. What did we really learn in 2025, and how will it shape the resident experience in 2026 and beyond? By the end, I hope you'll have practical ideas, fresh inspiration, and a clearer vision for how food, hospitality, and the resident experience can truly work together in your communities going into next year and beyond. So let's dive in. In 2025, we pushed hard on the idea that food in senior living should tell resident stories, not just meet their nutritional needs. From authenticity and local flavor to nutrient-dense, speed-scratch menus, the best dining rooms and restaurants became places where residents could taste their own history and culture.
And I think sometimes especially based on this high quality community that you look at, the menu and the food, like people think it has to be this over the top experience. And I'm curious, do you find that really truly it's more about the quality and consistency as opposed to the show and the flash?
Absolutely. In fact, quite the contrary sometimes, because a lot of times residents don't want to feel that they're coming to a 5-star restaurant and they have to dress appropriately and they have to be very demure and afraid to engage in conversation as they normally would. So a lot of times that's actually very intimidating to residents when they have the over-the-top presentation and they're like, I just want to come and eat my meal and enjoy it. So I think that works against community in a lot of ways. Some of my favorite communities to walk through are one that they know the residents so well. For instance, there's one I walk into and there's a teacup, the exact same table, the exact same seat every day. And they're like, she only wants that seat, but we know she likes to have a cup of tea prior to anything else.
Thinking about residents, one of the things that I know, I tell clients all the time, you get 80 residents and you get 95 opinions on the food and everybody's got a different direction. When you think about those resident preferences, right? Because you still have some that just want that simple food, that others that are very high expectations. When you think about this real food philosophy, how do you balance resident preferences with the approach of real food that Thomas Cuisine takes when supporting them?
it can be difficult sometimes, as you have mentioned, everybody, half the people you say, did you like this, will love it. Half the people will hate it. And so I think the first step in being a good partner to those residents is actually being engaged in that discussion. So whether that is having somebody on the resident council, the food committee, it's being involved in hearing what the residents like, and then using that to craft your menu just as a starting point. So say we're a very meat and potatoes community, maybe you're down in Texas, we'll take that into consideration and don't make a California seafood-centric menu for these residents. Start with the low-hanging fruit and then be open to the feedback. So engage with the residents, educate them on why something might be better choice as a real food versus something they're used to. And I've also found that there are a couple very, very powerful voices in the room when you view those committees. And so really taking the time to get those stakeholders on your side and in your corner can make such a difference when you're trying to change or adapt a menu.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
Another theme that ran throughout many episodes this year was the topic of leadership. And as we all know, leading a senior living community isn't just about operations and occupancy. It's about people. And as a part of our year in review, I want to revisit two great conversations on why soft skills such as intentional empathy and work-life integration aren't just nice to haves when it comes to senior living leadership, but they're core tools for creating connected teams and better resident experiences.
So let's start. Let's talk a little bit about empathy with intention, because I think that's a concept that a lot of leaders, especially when you're in the hustle and bustle of like running a senior living community, may be hard to really understand. And then talk about how it differs from sympathy, because obviously those are two very different things. And I want to know what your thoughts are on it.
I'm so glad that you brought up empathy and sympathy from the very beginning, because what my intention in this space is to redefine empathy, because too often empathy and sympathy are just lumped into this feeling space. It's woo-woo, it's soft, it takes away from accountability, it doesn't give us a chance to get the things that we need done. There's too much emotional stuff involved in it. But what I've discovered, Aaron, is that there is a difference between our empathic nature as humans and driving empathy as a skill with intention in the workplace. You see, our empathic nature is something that we developed as a survival skill because we're humans. Humans are wired to connect. But there are some people who have overdeveloped empathic natures, and there are some people who have underdeveloped empathic natures. But the great mediator between all of that, the great calibrator, is to consider empathy as a skill. Because when empathy is overdeveloped, it tends to come across as sympathy. And sympathy is driven and fueled by emotions, and the outcome of sympathy is resentment. The outcome and driver of sympathy feels like it doesn't feel good, you know? It creates a sense of entitlement. It creates a sense of just, I need you to do this for me. And then on the other side, your underdeveloped sense of empathy is people who tend to just not worry about the feelings, push them down all the time. And that's not a boss that's easy to work for either.
Yeah. When I think about a senior living leader, right, whether it's a culinary director, an executive director, resident engagement director, the piece there that I think is so important is we deal with connection all day, every day, almost every single minute.
The way that feels in my heart and soul and spirit is I don't want it to be balanced because I love my job. I love my life's work. I feel like I'm called for a purpose. However, if it's a balance, that seems 50-50 to me. And yes, I want my life's work to be valuable and important, but there's a whole other side of my life, including my kids, what brings me joy, socialization, that I don't want that just to be 50% of my life. And that's why I'm really keen on using the word integration, because there's times that I have to stop and think, I am leaning too heavy on my work side, and I need to make sure that I'm integrating the daily life of what brings me joy into that work life. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm way heavily upon integration and not balance.
I love the fact that you say work-life integration as it relates to work-life balance, because I think we get that, like you said, it's got to go back and forth between work and life and how that's all done. It's a refreshing way to look at it.
Absolutely. And even just the simple, I think a lot of this is about storytelling when you reflect on what you want your life to look like, especially when it comes to time and how you're effective and how you spend your time. So just that story about when you walked in that community, I'm sure you had a great story to tell, and that brings joy, and I'm sure it brings you joy. So I think that's great. That's a perfect example of integration.
For over a century, Benny Keith has been a trusted leader in the food service industry. As a broadline distributor, we offer an extensive selection of products, delivering to 21 states through 10 distribution centers. We can help you create a thriving culinary culture by pairing quality products with customized solutions that elevate your residents' dining experience. Our team of registered dietitians provide unmatched customer service by modifying menus, selecting recipes, ensuring regulatory compliance, and more. Quality, value, and service are at the heart of everything we do. Benny Keith Foods puts the care back in healthcare.
In the past year, resident experience shifted from a keep them busy to know them deeply philosophy. We've had a number of conversations on resident engagement, and those conversations really spoke to us about things we can do to engage and know our residents deeply, especially when we talked about memory care and how the thoughtful use of technology and the right sensory and supportive models can transform the environment for all of our residents.
Clearly, there was still a little bit of that technology expert living in the back of your head, because Zinnia TV is a technology platform, and it's clearly something you're passionate about. So when you think about the aha moment for Zinnia TV, what was that, and what made you think about using videos and having this full streaming service?
Yeah, sure. I remember it really clearly. When my husband moved to long-term care, he was no longer verbal. And when I would visit him, I would always struggle to find things to talk about. That is not unique to me. For family caregivers, it's often hard to figure out, like, what do you talk about with a person who is more advanced in their dementia? And so I would bring magazines, I would bring pictures. And eventually I started, I've got like a million pictures on my phone. So we would look at those pictures. And then I discovered that Apple has their memories product that allows me to actually build my own little videos. And so we would look at those videos. And so those videos are images that move along. There's music in the background. And those were pretty compelling. We couldn't watch TV together and have a conversation about what we're looking at, because there is too much dialogue and video that's moving at a very fast pace. There's a plot to follow. There are characters to keep track of. So that wouldn't work. I've also noticed that when he's watching TV in the care community, that he's completely zoned out. So are most of the other residents, frankly.
Right.
And so I just started doing research. Like, I've got these couple of different things that are going on in my head. Like, wow, I like being able to show him these little videos that I'm making. I wish that I had more content on my phone. Yeah. I would love to be able to create videos about skiing or about whitewater rafting, things that had been important to him as a healthy person. So I started doing research and I discovered this paper that was called Television Viewing and People with Dementia Living in Long-Term Care by Dr. Kate DiMedeiros. And what they did during the research that they did is they showed people living with dementia a bunch of different television shows, and they tried to assess what is better or worse for people living with dementia. They looked at I Love Lucy. They looked at Bob Ross doing painting. They watched news. And it turns out that the thing that they were able to pay the most attention to was something called Venice, which was images of Venice set to beautiful music. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm doing. I mean, like, that's what I'm building on my phone.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, so that was sort of my aha moment. You can build viewing that's better for a person with dementia. But I had this problem. I want more content on my phone so I could make more videos. And I had also started to think about, like, how do I do this at scale? How could I share my videos with other people in case they want to show them to their loved ones with dementia? So given my background in technology, I called up friends who were at Apple and I said, hey, I want to talk to somebody who knows this memories product because I have questions for them. And the person that I was put in touch with, a guy by the name of Frank Lee, had actually recently left Apple and he was kind of looking for his next gig. It turns out that he was on the design team for that memories product. Like, he knew it inside out and he knew what their goals were. He knew what their use cases were. And he had this forehead slap moment where he was like, oh my God, we never thought about the possibility of using this as a tool to build videos for people with cognitive issues. And so he was like, you know what? We can do something with this. So he lived in Vancouver. I live in Seattle. So I went to Vancouver. We met with another person, Berenice Freedom, who's a visual artist and filmmaker. And the three of us talked and we were like, let's just start making videos that we think would be meaningful for people who are living with dementia. And let's see if there's a possibility of turning this into a product.
And she really opened my eyes to what we can do for resident when we put them first and when we embrace them for who they are. It's not about us, it's about them. And going into their world, into their environment and making it about them, putting them first, really does change them and us and how we work together. The Montessori method is another one of my favorite things. This Montessori method takes everyday activities and gives our residents a sense of belonging, a sense of independence, a sense to be able to do things that they used to do in their everyday life that sometimes they can no longer manage. But with incorporating these Montessori methods, we give them adaptive materials, adaptive tools. You've seen this in the dining experience, an adaptive plate or fork that makes them successful where before they might not have felt successful. They were embarrassed. They didn't want to come out. We give them those tools to live life to the fullest.
"2025 brought a wave of new tools to senior living, but the core question stayed the same. Does this technology actually improve hospitality and resident connection? From CES to smarter menu systems, the focus was on using tech to support, not replace, human touch.
When I'm talking to these companies, that's one of the first things I ask is I say, do you know your consumer? Are you for sure you understand what the needs are of a dementia caregiver? And if not, if these people aren't sitting at your table, if you don't have someone that's bridging that gap so you can learn from people living with dementia and their family caregivers, and you're creating tech for them or professional caregivers, they need to be at the table and they need to be part of this process if you yourself haven't experienced it. And so I'm trying to be an advocate for making sure we're not wasting our time on tech that isn't truly about the end consumer.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. I so appreciate that. So, well, let's dive into some cool gadgets, right? And so I think what the best part about this is that I think when we talked and you said, yeah, I'm going to make some notes on things, you went in thinking, well, let me see if I can find a whole bunch of things around food and dining and the dining experience. But you came out with some cool things and we'll talk about a couple. But there were some kind of in general tools for operators that you saw that you thought would make a big difference. And so let's talk about the Kirin electric salt spoon.
Let's hope we're saying it right. I did not get to talk to someone about this, but I've been hearing about it and I saw it from afar. I never got to find them, unfortunately. But oh my gosh, I want this. This would help so much. So it's literally a spoon and it like gives you the taste of salt, but without you having to ingest salt. So you don't have to so it's better for your body. So you're not ingesting all this salt, but you still get that taste. And it's like this electricity that does it.
Okay.
And it makes it taste like your food is adequately salted. So can you imagine for someone who's having issues with not being able to put salt on everything and they still get the taste, but amazing for our health. But isn't that wild? So the device amplifies food saltiness by applying an electric current to the tongue.
It's an interesting take on an dining assistive device.
Right?
Because we've seen the spoons that have the gyroscope in them. They're designed for Parkinson's and that kind of thing. And those are really great. They have the ones that also have the heavier, thicker handles, so they're easier to manage. Those are the first place we go. But I don't know how many times I have to deal with this whole back and forth of the food doesn't have enough salt in it, but you can't oversalt the food because we can't have that much sodium, right? That's a constant back and forth that we hear all the time. And so for someone who has to watch their sodium intake, wants to manage that, I could see an immense value to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to use this when I have my soup, right? The soup is usually where I tend to go to, but this is the perfect solution for that. It's like, I always get this statistic close, but not quite right. But if you lose 55% of your taste buds by the time you reach the age of 70, I believe it is.
So sad.
I mean, it is, but something like this, it's a supportive and assisted device that they don't think they needed. So over the last 3 seasons of the podcast, I've had at least one conversation where I talked with a robotics expert. And usually we're talking about dining robots and robots that have the 3 trays and they know where to go in the dining room, or they can deliver meals, or maybe they can sweep floors. But you saw one that kind of takes that to a whole new level. And so it was called Mirokai. And the way they frame it is the humanoid robot ready to revolutionize service. So tell us a little bit about this robot.
Yeah, they spoke on the ARP stage and it was just wild. It looks like a fox and it has just this really Disney-ish face. I've never seen one like that where it was an animal. So that all of a sudden, already was like, okay, this is different. And they're colorful, but they're from France and they're made to help in healthcare settings. So they're literally made to push carts in a hospital. They showed that, or be in a senior living community and do the engagement. Talk with people, go in their room and just really be a social device and also help answer questions around the community. But it was really cool to see just hanging out around the stage and talking to the moderator in real time beautifully. It all made sense. It was wild to see it respond in real time and say, what would you like to talk about today? But it was definitely different than a human one that I could see. I think its main purpose really is that socialization.
One of the other things that I found fascinating as you were walking me through everything is the way you approached the cross-departmental needs. Because I think a lot of times when you look at a program like a point of sale system, everybody thinks, oh, that's it for dining. Dining needs to use that. So let's just train our chefs and our managers over there and we're good to go. But there are so many other departments that are touching this. So as you were doing this immersive learning and implementation, why was that role-based approach that you took to implementation so important? And then how did you go through what each position needed to learn and needed to know?
I think the number one word, if I had it encompassed in one word, would be accountability. Because not that the executive director needs to know the bells and whistles on how to do every single thing in e-menu, but they need to know how to do it if they have to cover for their dining director, or if they have to go hop in and they're down on servers and they need to go pick up an iPad and lend that hand for a lunch shift or a dinner shift. So overall, they should have that general knowledge. And because e-menu is so easy and user-friendly, it takes a couple of minutes, less than 15 minutes to try to look at the playbook, look at the videos that we made, and just try to learn how to place an order for a shift. So it was really important from accountability, but also obviously using that in a different capacity. We also have business office managers who are
also taught how to use the system. And what I've implemented is RAPE-C checklist, so that each one of those roles for the tasks that are needed know who is responsible, but also everyone's accountable to kind of at least know where to go to find the information if they have to slip into that role.
As I wrap up this year in review and look back on this season of Tips from Trestle, one thing is clear. These conversations about food, hospitality, and the resident experience are not side topics. They are the work of senior living. Every story about a resident's favorite meal, every insight on managing from the middle, every idea about tech that actually enhances connection has pointed in the same direction. Residents want to be known, not just served. So heading into 2026, the goal is to keep pushing that conversation forward. That means digging deeper into real food and authenticity, getting even more practical about leadership at every level, and continuing to highlight programs and tools that reduce isolation and elevate dignity in the dining room. It also means being honest about the pressures operators face and still choosing approaches that put residents at the center. So here's my invitation to you. Keep bringing questions, challenges, and success stories. Share tips from Trestle with a colleague and use clips in your team huddles and let these ideas spark new experiments in your own communities. In 2026, I'm going to promise that Tips from Trestle will keep exploring the senior living industry in food, hospitality, and the resident experience, one conversation, one meal, and one resident story at a time. So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.